One of the harshest places on Earth. An international crew attempts the impossible. They're building a dam as high as a skyscraper to create a lake as big as a city. And they're digging a tunnel 25 miles long to send water from the lake to a huge hydroelectric plant. But there's one disaster after another. Avalanches, floods, smash-ups. Plus, hardly anyone speaks the same language. Can 1,500 workers overcome deadly terrain, miserable weather, and prison-like conditions? Right now on Extreme Engineering. It's mid-April in northern Iceland, just below the Arctic Circle. At the bottom of this remote 200-foot canyon, a construction crew fights a desperate battle. They're trying to build a dam, the largest of its kind in the world, over 55 stories tall. But the whole world in which they're working seems to be fighting them. Tim Hill is a supervising engineer on the dam project.
I think the most extreme thing is the weather, without a doubt. A lot of snow, difficult visibility, and cold weather conditions. It got down to around minus 20 degrees centigrade.
And that's not all. The canyon walls, undisturbed for millions of years, are now throwing off a constant stream of rocks. Workers below are getting pelted, but the work can't stop. The crew is racing to beat the oncoming spring thaw. Italian engineer Girolamo Vardaniga is the boss.
We feel uncomfortable when we are forced to stop the job for any reason.
But today, the crew will be forced to stop. A machine operator gets out of his cab to check his work. Seconds later, a 200-pound boulder falls silently from above. It catches him on the back of his neck. He is killed instantly. Managers order everyone out of the canyon. It seems that they have tragically underestimated the difficulty and the danger of the entire undertaking. It all began in 2003, when the Alcoa Aluminum Company struck a deal with the government of Iceland. Alcoa would build a smelting plant, supplying desperately needed jobs to a remote area. But there was a catch. The plant required massive amounts of electricity. The government would have to build a new power plant to supply it. The cost? $1.3 billion. 1/3 the annual budget for the entire nation. The project is so immense, it's really two projects. The dam will create a lake the size of New York's Manhattan Island. Water from the lake will funnel into a massive tunnel 25 miles long. At the end of the tunnel, the water will drop down a 1,000-foot shaft into a series of 6 turbines that will generate the electricity. But tunnel construction is also seriously behind.
Thank you.
Mike Berngasser is the only American on the project.
We need a new O-ring.
He barely made it here alive.
everything was closed here due to the harsh weather, 60 to 70 mile an hour winds, and a lot of snow as well, so the road was completely closed, and it took them 2 days to open the road. Had they not given me a big red snowsuit to go along with some work boots and stuff, I probably would have froze.
Mike wasn't the only thing frozen. When he arrived, he found dozens of huge crates. They were sections of the massive machine that would actually dig the tunnel, delivered to the site, but then just left outside, exposed to the elements. They were now covered in solid ice. Mike is an expert in getting the machine up and running fast. But for weeks, he couldn't even get the crates open.
Most of the first 2.5 weeks on site, we spent chipping ice and cleaning snow off of parts and organizing parts that they had already stacked around the job site in the wrong order.
The machine Mike was sent here to babysit is a mechanical beast called a tunnel boring machine. It's a drill the size of a locomotive.
Basically, the machine is a giant inchworm, a big piece of steel equipment that bores a round hole in solid rock.
Getting the machine running takes time and teamwork. It took workers 2 months to get enough of the machine together to push it inside the tunnel.
So you're going to move the brackets as well?
Yeah, everything's got to move. The brackets
Now,
gotta
Mike
go
and
over.
his South African colleague Chris DeLanga are trying to show the crew how to hook up the hydraulic and electrical systems and finish the track the machine will ride on. But there's a problem. Almost nobody on the crew speaks the same language.
Oh, he has to re-weld. We have to lift it up, and then he's going to re-weld it on the bottom.
Yeah, just be careful that it doesn't cut into the main frame. It's cutting into the main frame. Okay.
Mike and Chris are having trouble making themselves understood. It's slowing things way down.
Yeah, I need you to tell me because the beer. You will wait 1 moment.
Yeah, okay.
While work in the tunnel inches forward, back at the dam, things are still at a standstill. 1 week ago, when a worker was killed by a falling rock, managers pulled the crew out and called a halt to construction. But now they need to get going again. In a few weeks, the spring thaw will hit and the river will rise fast, threatening the work they've done so far. Here's what they've accomplished so far. The first phase of any dam building project is creating a dry work site in the middle of a raging river. To do that, they first blasted a curving tunnel called a diversion tunnel through the canyon walls. The diversion tunnel will give the river a new path around the work site. Next, they built a small temporary dam called a cofferdam that forces the river into the tunnel. Then, where the river empties out of the diversion tunnel and back into the canyon, they built a second small dam to make sure the river can't back up into the work site. But because of the fatality, the work is way behind. The temporary dams aren't high enough yet to withstand the coming high water. If the work site gets flooded, the project will be forced to shut down until next winter, a financial disaster. So project leaders come up with a plan to reduce the danger from falling rocks to let work restart in the canyon. High up on the walls, they erect makeshift fences to catch rocks rolling down. They also drape netting over the most unstable sections of the canyon face. It seems like an exercise in futility. The canyon is immense, and the crew can reach only a small fraction of the exposed surface. dam in such a dangerous, unforgiving place? Because the location has one of the largest sources of water on Earth. Just upstream from the dam site is this, the largest glacier in all of Europe. It's 3,200 square miles in area. And in the spring, when it starts to melt, the runoff swells the river into a raging torrent. Project engineers knew that water could generate a lot of electricity. Damming a river sounds simple. Build a wall that holds back the water. But it's not that simple. Water is very heavy, and a lot of water exerts incredible pressure. To make this dam secure will require 11 million tons of rock. Right now, though, the problem isn't getting enough rocks to build the dam. The problem is to keep more rocks from falling on the crew. Two weeks ago, on Iceland's massive hydropower project, work was abruptly halted when a crew member was killed by a falling rock. Since then, crews have been struggling to make the work area safe. Finally, the word comes. Dam building can resume. Today marks a major milestone for the project. It's the first concrete pour for what will eventually become the final dam. When dry, this unassuming blob will lie at the base of a 55-story structure, more than twice as tall as the tallest building in Iceland today.
This is official, the first pouring of concrete in the dam foundation. I hope at least next Saturday someone will open a bottle of wine.
But there's no time to celebrate now. For Danica and the crew are working around the clock, trying to beat the coming spring thaw. And they're not the only ones struggling on this project. 10 miles away, the team trying to dig the big 25-mile-long tunnel is having an even tougher time. Mike Berngasser and Chris DeLanga are trying to get the massive tunnel boring machine up and running. They've got to drill 25 miles of tunnel through solid rock. But the assembly process is taking far longer than it should.
Did you get some cables for this belt or no?
No.
You're not putting it on cables?
No.
When you're putting this machine together, there's a lot of little problems, and normally the people that put these machines together they're not very technical.
Mike and Chris don't put the thing together themselves. Their job is to show the crew how to do it.
And then you can even put the turnbuckle, huh? So you can adjust up and down.
Ah, yes, okay.
It's like being a babysitter, basically. You have 50 children, and you have to set them up, and you have to organize them, and then you have to get them working and keep them working. Clean that
And
up.
that's a problem. Because even though they're the experts, Mike and Chris aren't in charge. An Italian contracting company is. So the crew really doesn't have to do what Chris and Mike tell them to do.
Well, it's got to pivot, so the problem is you're between the decks here, so these two got to move. It should be marked either with a B or a V.
It doesn't help things that almost nobody speaks the same language.
Yeah, but they're cutting another one out there. What's that for? I thought we already had them already done. They're trying to organize some plates, but the welder outside didn't understand exactly what Chris wanted.
Eventually, Chris gives up, picks up the torch, and cuts the plate himself. one small piece at a time, this machine is coming together. The next day, the dam building crew is caught by a nasty surprise. Temperatures have risen earlier and faster than expected. It appears that the spring thaw has come early to the canyon. The entire work site has turned to mud, making movement difficult and treacherous. To make matters worse, rain is melting the snowpack. Water is pouring into the canyon from above, loosening the rock face again. Worst of all, the river is rising, way ahead of schedule.
Last night we had a call from the contractor that he was worried that the water level was rising too fast in the river.
The rising water is starting to overpower the temporary dams. The downstream dam is faring the worst. Large chunks of it have already washed away.
Last night we had about another metre, 2 metres of water coming out of the outlet, and that caused quite severe erosion of this edge of the cofferdam.
Vardanica knows that if the river keeps rising, it will overwhelm the diversion tunnel and flood the work site. Engineers had planned for this. Crews have already begun work on a second diversion tunnel above the first one to handle the increased flow. But because of the delays, this new tunnel isn't finished yet. And the forecast calls for heavy rain for the next 24 hours. The crew must now rush to protect the dam's eroding edge. Earth movers grab the largest nearby boulders and drop them into the raging river in front of the dam. Mike and Chris are finally making some progress getting their gigantic tunnel boring machine put together. The business end of the machine is called the cutter head. It's a huge spinning wheel, 25 feet in diameter, weighing 70 tons. But like the rest of the machine, the wheel arrived at the site in pieces. Now, those pieces have to be welded together with incredible precision. So a company of world-class welders is brought in from South Africa just to weld the cutter head. Their name? Extreme Welding.
These guys are really good. Extreme Welding's guys, they can do it.
The Extreme Welding team works for a solid month, carefully assembling 9 huge pieces into a perfect round.
This guy's got all the time in the world.
Even though he's impatient, Chris won't rush the guys. The success of the whole tunnel depends on them doing their job right. And when they're done, it's a thing of beauty to behold. The cutter head is almost ready for Chris's inspection. Back at the dam, the crew is still battling furiously to save their work site from the rising river.
The water level in the river has risen again tonight, and it's higher now than it was last night.
In spite of their earlier efforts to shore it up, the downstream dam is in danger of collapse. Water is now seeping through it into the area where workers poured concrete earlier in the week. Now pumps are all that's keeping the site from being inundated. But the pressure of the raging river behind the dam threatens to push the whole thing into the work area. So Vardaniga takes a calculated risk. He decides to turn off the pumps to let the worksite flood. He's hoping that equalizing the pressure between the river and the worksite will save the dam from collapse. But there's another problem. The rising river is now almost to the top of the lower diversion tunnel. If it goes much higher, it will flood the unfinished upper tunnel, damaging it severely. So Vardaniga makes another bold move. He orders workers to partially plug up the entrance to the upper tunnel. He's trying to buy some time. If it works, the plug will block the first few feet of the tunnel from the rising river. That might be just enough to save it. But he's taking a big risk. By blocking the tunnel, the plug would let the river get dangerously close to the top of the upstream dam. If the dam is breached, it would be ruined. The project could be shut down for a year. As dusk falls, the workers evacuate the canyon. Tonight, the team can only wait and hope that the angry river doesn't undo in a single night their months of hard work. Iceland's massive hydropower project, Tim Hill heads back to the canyon worksite to see if 9 months of work have been destroyed by an overnight flood. He's hopeful because temperatures dropped during the night. The first indications are good.
And the water level now is about a metre below where it was last night.
The river crested during the night. It's now safely below the top of the tunnel. But at the downstream dam, the news is not so good. As expected, the site is flooded. The concrete base poured just 2 days ago is underwater.
What's happened is that the water has come from the river and it's come through the coffer dam.
Crews rushed to reconnect the pumps that were shut off yesterday.
Have we started pumping yet, or are the pumps still off?
Pumps are running.
They're on.
Yeah, pumps are running, but as you know, there is a lot of water.
As the pumps do their job, the team surveys the damage to the dam. It's bad.
Yes.
Dirty seepage indicates that the dam's center has failed. And it gets worse. Cracks on top of the dam mean the whole thing has shifted. They've got their work cut out for them. More repairs.
Come. Voglio chiama excavatore, metto giù quattro roba grossa.
But Tim and Vardaniga aren't complaining. It could have been a lot worse. Now, they just need the cooler weather to hold so they can get back to dam building.
Perfect.
And they have a newfound respect for the river. It's been flowing through this canyon for millions of years, and it's clearly not about to be tamed without a fight. At the end of an emotional day, the workers return to camp. They're about to test the work of the project's most important crew, the kitchen staff. Without these guys, nothing around here would happen. Dam and tunnel building makes for some serious hunger. The project consumes 4 tons of food every day.
650 people for the breakfast, lunch and dinner. 25 or 27 nationalities.
2,300 pounds of meat. 3,300 pounds of fruits and vegetables. 750 pounds of potatoes. And enough dessert for everyone. But with guys here from over 30 countries, how do you satisfy so many different appetites?
Trying to make them all feel at home sometimes. Actually, I prefer vegetables. I don't like to eat meat.
Separated from family by thousands of miles, the men mainly just retreat to their dormitory-style rooms.
We don't drink. We don't have women. What can we do? Smoke and wait.
This guy has invented his own rather unique form of entertainment. He enjoys setting his pants on fire. A little lighter fluid, a match, and for a moment, everything's a bit brighter. Who says Iceland's a boring place?
This is fun.
We are like a monastery. We have just work and rest. Work and rest. We are like monks.
The next morning, back in the big tunnel, the South African welding crew has assembled 9 pieces to form the huge circular front end of the tunnel boring machine. It's now one humongous drill bit. Chris and Mike are one step closer to getting the thing actually cutting rock. But not so fast. Before the machine can start turning, Chris must carefully inspect the welder's work. The tiniest flaws in the welds could cause the whole thing to rattle apart.
This is imperative, because if this head has any cracks, automatically they'll start spreading around. The moment they start spreading, the head will start flexing, and that creates major problems. I actually use 3 different products. The first product I use is a solvent to remove any welds.
Next, Chris applies a red dye that seeps into the tiniest of cracks in the welds. Then, a white powder.
So if there are any cracks, what happens, the dye actually comes out of the crack and settles on the white powder on the outside, which then shows you where the problem is. Hopefully we don't have any of those.
There are nearly 100 feet of welds on the cutter head. Chris checks every inch himself.
It's not that I don't trust other people to do it. I prefer doing it myself, because then I know it's been done the right way. At this stage, I need to take the responsibility because it's my baby. I look after this machine. I'm happy with it so far. Looking good. Looking really good.
It takes Chris 2 days to inspect the welds. But in the end, he's satisfied.
I didn't have any surface cracks. I didn't have any problems with guys over-welding and undercutting. All the welds went well, as I expected.
With decades of experience, Mike is a tunnel machine expert. That means that everyone on the site comes to him with their problems. Sometimes he gets a bit testy.
Number 6. I'm busy right at the moment. I'll look at it when I get a chance. I'm trying to fix the water for you.
This is a pretty frustrating job sometimes. For me, the longer I'm away from home, the more frustrating it gets.
The cutter head is finally in one piece. But Mike and Chris noticed another problem. The crew was supposed to weld numbers onto these metal cutting blades before mounting them into the big wheel. but they didn't do it. Without the numbers, Mike and Chris won't be able to track how much each cutter is used. It's a big problem.
It's a problem, so I think it's better if they just take the cutters out and redo them.
Chris tells the crew to take the cutters out and number them properly. But the next day, it still hasn't been done. They seem to be ignoring his requests.
As you can see, the cutters are still not in the cutter head here. They were told to put them in, well numbers and put them in, but they are refusing to do it,
So we're hopefully going to put the numbers on today and have them back in tonight again.
But unless these guys can get it together soon, this tunnel is going nowhere. Iceland's huge hydropower project has finally caught a break. Winter has returned with a vengeance.
Yeah, so the water level is probably 3 meters below where it was last night and the night before.
Is way down, but the crew is taking no chances. They're adding just a bit more bulk to that downstream dam just in case. The machines now go out to the very edge of the dam to drop their loads into the river. One slip, and this machine goes right in.
they know I'm going home and they know I'm coming back, and they didn't say anything, so I guess
Tunnel manager Chris is waiting impatiently for Mike to get off the phone.
The other machines should be better because they were actually, you know, all strung out. This was a problem.
There's another problem in the tunnel, and he needs Mike's help.
Hey, it's fun here, Mike. You got to come over, really. Yeah. When's your wife going to have a baby?
Once again, it's the long walk back inside. Here's the latest problem. The cutters have finally been installed on the cutter head, but they were put in from the wrong side. The crew installed the cutters from the front and mistakenly sealed them in from the back. But periodically, the cutters need to be removed from the back of the machine.
Oh, because they didn't slide the cutters from the back side. They put them in from the front side.
Yeah, that's why the damn things don't fit, because we aired this thing out, rewelded it back to the original width, and now nothing fits anymore.
There's only one solution. The cutters must be taken out again and put back in the right way from the back.
That's the stuff that they should have picked up a long time ago already, because the guys have been fiddling with other stuff and not getting down to this. Now I've got to run around and try and sort it out.
It'll take Chris a full day of welding to fix the problem. In the canyon, things are now moving quickly. The crew is starting to install the reinforcing steel that will give strength to the dam as it goes up. Just above the canyon, workers are assembling a series of huge ramps and conveyors. When they're complete, these ramps will be used to send millions of tons of rock and gravel straight down the canyon into the construction area. That will greatly speed the building process. It will also eliminate the need for the slow parade of dump trucks that have hauled the material in so far. Of course, everyone on the crew knows that the weather will change again soon. But this time, they're determined to stay ahead of it. It's 3 weeks later at the Iceland Hydropower Project. Today marks another landmark for the project. Up until now, all vehicles have used this temporary bridge to get in and out of the canyon worksite. But today, the bridge must come out. In a few days, the river might be so high, the bridge would be underwater.
So they've got 2 cranes down there, and they're actually lifting the bridge off its supports.
After the bridge is gone, the only way to bring additional rock and gravel to the site will be the new conveyor system. So after today, most trucks will leave the canyon for good. Only the biggest equipment will remain, stuck inside until the fall. That's when the top of the dam should reach the top of the canyon walls. Then they'll simply drive out over the dam. But when Tim arrives at the bridge, he's caught by surprise. The bridge should be gone by now, but it hasn't moved.
Good morning. What is this that's going in?
The problem? The cranes sent to lift it are too small. Just another day on the Iceland Hydro Project. But other work is progressing. The crew is now laying down layer upon layer of rock and dirt, building up the canyon floor as fast as they can. Downstream, another milestone. The crew is now placing the giant boulders that will form the outside face of the final dam.
So this is right at the downstream toe of the dam, and from here we'll rise up 200 meters to the crest.
The crew is still behind schedule, but Tim is cautiously optimistic that now he'll be able to make up some time.
We could have a flood tomorrow, we could have a flood the next day, but for every day that goes on, the risk becomes higher and higher.
If all goes well, the dam will be up to the canyon walls by the end of summer. And in 3 short years, the reservoir will be full and the turbines turning. That is, if the tunnel boring machine can start drilling. Back at the big tunnel, it's a momentous day. It's finally time to power up the machine and see if the months of welding, wiring, and tinkering are going to pay off. Mike gives some last-minute instructions.
Yeah, he can watch. If it starts to build up, he can tell you.
And Chris makes some final adjustments.
They have to put oil on, otherwise we're going to have a major problem, buddy.
Inside the control room, the operator throws the switch.
You can hear the rumbling in the background, which means the cutter head is turning and the rock is going out in the conveyor system.
No one is allowed close to the cutter head while it's drilling. But there's no question the steady stream of debris coming off the conveyor belt means that at last, tunnel drilling is officially underway.
When the machine starts up for the first time, it's really magic. It's a feeling that you can't explain to anybody. It's a feeling of achievement.
And for Mike, it's a glorious moment. It means that his work on the project will soon be over.
When it started, that's a good thing for me, because usually that means I'm going home shortly.
The machine is running perfectly. Until...
Power shut down. Dropped out the power. Lee, what's going on, buddy? You turned the power off? So obviously there seems to be a problem with the incoming power today, and this is the 3rd time in a short span that we've lost power. What's the problem, Cuckoo? Substation?
After some running around, the problem is located. It's a delinquent hose, spraying water onto the power lines. It's shut off. The wires dried off, and the machine is up and running once again. 125 feet of tunnel a day. That's the pace the machine will have to keep up for the next 3 years. With the machine finally running, Mike can leave Iceland and head off to his next tunneling project. Despite all the hassles, he leaves satisfied.
At the end of the day, when the machine's up and operational and it's going down the tunnel, then you know that you accomplished something. The harder jobs, you have a better sense of accomplishment because you had to work a lot harder to achieve the goal.
Chris DeLanga now packs up his gear and moves 30 miles down the road where he'll start work on a second machine. And when he's done with that, he'll move to a third. He'll stay on till the bitter end, making sure they all keep working.
I've got to be here for 4 years. But yes, that's the way it goes. Want money, must work.
Tim Hill is also planning to stay on until the project is done.
It's always exciting to work on big projects that people know about. And it just adds that extra little bit of excitement.
For the next 3 years, crews will continue to fight the elements, battle the terrain, and face down problems they can't even imagine today. When this project is complete, this part of Iceland will be just a little less wild, forced into the service of mankind. And for the army of 1,500 nomadic workers who make it all possible, it will be on to the next challenge. Some of them are already making plans.
In 3 years, this will be full of water. This will remain as an island. So maybe it will be a nice idea to open a restaurant on the lake.